I got a couple of things to decide. Should I kill you and wait for him, or should I wait for him and kill him in front of you? Best years of my life in the penitentiary. I wasted my whole youth.
I was just talking when I said that. And then I didn't know about going viral.
We all suspected something was off with Clifton Powell, and now he's finally confirming the rumors.
You do the history of Hollywood. A lot of us start out great and end up bad.
He played hustlers and violent men so convincingly. People stopped calling it acting. They called it too real.
I don't give a say. I don't get out of bed for 2:30. Don't come through this so early.
But when a woman accused him of in 2013, suddenly, all those intense roles didn't feel like fiction anymore. He said it was a setup, said it was all consensual, but the case never really went away. And neither did the whispers about his on-set behavior, his attitude, or his reputation behind closed doors. So, what really happened? In 2013, Clifton Powell's name made headlines, and not because of a movie role. A woman from Louisiana filed a $75,000 civil lawsuit against the actor, accusing him of
If somebody accused me of them or hurting them, I have a 22-year-old daughter. I would never hurt any.
The alleged incident had happened 2 years earlier, in 2011. According to the woman's claim, what began as a consensual encounter took a dark and violent turn. She said Powell crossed the line, that he used force, that she said no, and that he ignored it. Immediately, the story spread across gossip blogs and urban news outlets. The headlines were loud. Clifton Powell sued for... And even though it wasn't a criminal case, the public reaction didn't wait for details. For many, the damage had already been done. Powell responded quickly and publicly. He denied everything. He said the encounter was completely consensual and that the lawsuit was a lie, a money grab with no basis in truth. In interviews, he called the accusation ridiculous and said he would fight it all the way. He didn't shy away. He looked right at the camera and said he was being targeted. But the truth is, the story didn't go away. Even without criminal charges, even without video, audio, or witness testimony going viral, the accusation stuck. Not because it was proven, not because it was covered non-stop, but because it fit a narrative that already existed around him. For years, Clifton Powell had built a reputation for playing intense, aggressive, and sometimes downright terrifying men. Whether it was Menace to Society, Dead Presidents, or Bones, Powell was always the one pulling a gun, flipping a table, or staring someone down until they cracked.
Hey, can I help you, pimp dude?
He was good at it. Too good, some would say. So, when this lawsuit dropped, some fans didn't know what to think. Was this just another case of real life blending with fiction? Or had he been hiding behind the mask of his characters all along? To be clear, no criminal charges were ever filed. The lawsuit never became a police investigation. It was a civil case, which means it was about money, not jail time. And that distinction matters. But in the court of public opinion, many people don't see the difference. What also made it worse was the lack of closure. There was no big televised trial, no viral moment of accountability or vindication. The case quietly faded from coverage, with no clear resolution ever made public. Some sources say it was dismissed, others say it settled out of court, but nobody really knows, and that silence left room for rumors. Some said Powell paid her off just to move on, even if he wasn't guilty. Others said the woman dropped the case because she couldn't prove her story. Neither version was confirmed, and Powell didn't speak on it again. He just moved forward. But even as he tried to focus on work, the shadow of the lawsuit never really left. Anytime his name popped up, so did that headline. To his supporters, Powell was being railroaded. Another strong black man being dragged down without evidence. To his critics, the silence around the outcome was suspicious. And for people in the middle, it just left a bad taste. What made it even trickier was how Clifton carried himself afterward. He was still giving interviews. still speaking on panels, still defending his career and legacy. But you could tell some doors had quietly closed.
You don't have the training, and you got to go in, and you haven't taken the time to work with a trainer or a coach, you could be all over the place. Because once you get in that room, man, your nerves can go to some places.
He wasn't the lead anymore. He wasn't the breakout name. And whether it was the lawsuit or just bad timing, his path to the A-list seemed permanently blocked. And so, the case that wasn't criminal still ended up being career-crushing. The lawsuit might have shocked some fans, but for others, it didn't seem all that far off. Because whether it was fair or not, Clifton Powell had already been carrying a certain image. Even before the legal trouble, he was known for playing the villain, the hustler, the hothead, the man who always looked like he could explode at any second. And that wasn't just a casting choice, it became a brand. From Menace to Society, to Dead Presidents, to Bones, Powell brought a kind of aggression that stood out. His characters weren't just loud, they were dangerous. He didn't play bad guys like caricatures. He played them like men you'd cross the street to avoid. Unpredictable, violent, real.
I did one movie, and let me address this. I did one movie, Women Thou Art Loosed, and they called me because somebody else, the lead actor, dropped out.
And for a while, that worked in his favor. Casting directors knew exactly what they were getting. Powell could bring fear and intensity with just a stare. He didn't need big dialogue or flashy scenes. His presence alone did the work. But over time, the line between actor and role started to blur. People stopped separating Clifton Powell, the man, from the characters he played. So when the lawsuit dropped, and fans read about physical force, intimidation, and control, it didn't sound like a story about a stranger. It sounded like a scene out of one of his movies. That's the danger of typecasting. In Hollywood, when you play the same role enough times, people start to believe it's who you are. And for Powell, that meant constantly being seen as the aggressor, the man with the temper, not because he said or did those things in real life, but because audiences had seen him do it on screen 100 times.
And I don't need somebody like you messing things up with your little phone calls to the police.
And off camera, there were whispers too. People inside the industry started sharing stories, quietly behind the scenes, about Powell being difficult to work with, that he had a short fuse, that he brought the same intensity to the set that he brought to his roles. No confirmed blow-ups, no public footage, but enough to keep the rumors alive. Directors and co-stars never came forward to call him out, but they didn't exactly rush to defend him either. His name started carrying a certain weight, one that made producers nervous, not because of a criminal record, not because of canceled projects, but because of the vibe. People said he was too intense, that he was hard to direct, that he came in too strong for the room. Powell, for his part, has always pushed back on those claims. He's said repeatedly that his passion for the craft gets misunderstood, that he takes acting seriously. Maybe too seriously. But that doesn't mean he's a problem. He said he brings authenticity, not attitude. That his presence might be heavy, but it's not hostile. Still, the stories stuck. And paired with the roles he kept playing, the pattern was hard to ignore. Over and over, he was cast as the boyfriend, the crooked cop, the dirty uncle, the violent ex-con. And each time, the image got stronger, even when the man behind it tried to show a different side. It wasn't just about screen time anymore. It was about reputation.
Well, I'm gonna show you how we do it up here in Pinky's, nigga.
Some critics said he was reinforcing harmful stereotypes, especially about black men. That by constantly taking roles full of rage and violence, he was feeding into a system that already saw black men as dangerous. Others defended him, saying those roles needed to be played with depth, and no one brought more layers to a villain than Clifton Powell. So when the lawsuit hit, it landed differently. It didn't feel like a random accusation. It felt like a piece that fit a larger puzzle. Fair or not, people filled in the blanks using the roles he played and the stories they'd heard. And just like that, a man who had built his career on being intense and unforgettable was now boxed in by that same intensity in real life. But before the roles, before the Hollywood spotlight, before the controversies, Powell was just a kid from Southeast Washington, D.C., and the streets he grew up on, they were nothing like a movie set. That pressure, that tension, it never really left him, and maybe that's why he plays it so well. When Powell steps into a character that's violent or unhinged, he's not guessing how it feels. He's pulling from real life, from the people he watched growing up, from the rage he saw in broken homes, from the fear he felt walking home late at night. That emotional rawness, the sharp tone, the thousand-yard stare, the buried trauma, it's not an act, it's memory. And that's part of what makes his acting so convincing.
I got a couple of things to decide. Should I kill you and wait for him, or should I wait for him and kill him in front of you?
But it also blurs the line between what's performance and what's personal. Coming from that background, Powell developed a mindset that's all about self-protection. He's not soft-spoken, he's not overly polished, he's blunt, direct, and sometimes aggressively honest. He learned early on that being too quiet can get you overlooked, or worse. And as his fame grew, so did his guard. Then there are the reports that he's difficult or too much on set. The moments when he clapped back hard in interviews. The lawsuit, the defensiveness, the tension that seems to follow him. To some, it all feels like a pattern. But when you zoom out, it looks more like a survival tactic. The habits of a man who never had the luxury of relaxing. Even when Powell broke into Hollywood, he was still carrying Southeast DC in his bones. That grit, that defensiveness, that edge, it didn't fade, it just got sharper. And the more success he found, the more it seemed like he had to defend it. Especially as a black actor in an industry that's quick to replace you the moment you show emotion. By the time the lawsuit came and the accusations started flying, Powell had already been fighting for his place in a system that never really embraced him fully. The lawsuit wasn't just about guilt or innocence. It was a test, a public one, and it reminded people just how intense he really was, even off camera. But maybe that intensity isn't just part of his image. Maybe it's the result of a life that never gave him a chance to be anything else. Clifton Powell spent most of his career flying under the radar, even when he was playing big roles, even when his face was instantly recognizable from a dozen gritty films. He wasn't the kind of celebrity getting chased by paparazzi. He liked it that way. No red carpet scandals, no viral meltdowns, just the work, intense, raw, and real. But all of that changed when his son fell in love with Sasha Obama. Yes, that's Sasha, the daughter of Barack and Michelle Obama, one of the most high-profile families in the world. And suddenly, Clifton Powell, the same man who'd spent decades keeping his private life out of the headlines, was now in the middle of a media frenzy. Photos started popping up on gossip sites. Headlines like "Sasha Obama's new boyfriend revealed" spread fast. At the center of it, Clifton Powell Jr., a young man trying to build his own career in directing and writing. And right behind him, his famous dad, whose name was now being searched again, but for all the wrong reasons.
So Sasha Obama has a boyfriend, and now we know who he is. It is Clifton Powell Jr. He's the son of Clifton Powell.
For Clifton, it was a strange moment. The public wasn't just interested in his son, they were interested in him too. Not because of his work, but because people were digging into his past. The lawsuit resurfaced. The rumors about his temperament came back up. His name started trending for the first time in years, and not because of a movie role. And for a man who had fought so hard to protect his peace, that attention hit different. He didn't ask for it. He wasn't chasing clout. And unlike other actors who might have used the moment for exposure, Clifton kept quiet. He gave no interviews about the relationship. He didn't post about it. He didn't use it to leverage his own brand. He stayed back, watching as strangers picked apart his family, his son, and himself. Some people thought he was lucky, that having a connection to the Obamas could boost his profile. But Clifton didn't see it that way. For him, fame was never something you celebrate. Fame was pressure. Fame was scrutiny. Fame was the thing that could ruin you if you weren't ready. And now his family was in the middle of it. In the few times he did speak about it, Clifton made it clear he was proud of his son. He said Powell Jr. was focused, creative, and respectful. He supported the relationship.
We love the Obamas, but Mr. Obama has a daughter that's dating my son, and I have an opportunity and a responsibility to make my son responsible, gentle, kind.
But he also admitted something deeper. He wasn't comfortable with the spotlight suddenly landing on them. Not like that. Not from that angle. Because once the press starts digging, they don't stop. Every past role, every controversy, every comment, it all gets recycled. And when you've spent your life building a wall between your career and your personal life, that kind of exposure feels invasive. For years, Clifton Powell was able to control how people saw him. He was the actor, the tough guy, the scene stealer. People didn't know who he dated, where he lived, or what his kids looked like. He kept his life in compartments, the art over here, the family over there. But now those walls were coming down. It wasn't just about public perception anymore. It was about legacy. What would people remember him for? The roles? The lawsuit? His connection to the Obamas? He didn't have an answer. But one thing was clear. Being connected to power didn't bring protection. If anything, it brought more pressure, more attention, more chances for his past to be reopened. And for a man who'd fought so long to control his image, the most unexpected plot twist of all was this. He was now part of someone else's narrative. For most of his career, Clifton Powell kept it tight. He played the roles, showed up, and let his work speak for itself. But after years of being typecast, overlooked, and, most recently, dragged into the public eye through his son's high-profile relationship, Clifton finally started to talk back. And when he did, he didn't hold back. First, he took the time to advise his son. In an interview with the Dear Fathers podcast, Clifton's dad, Ray star Clifton Powell, shared his thoughts about his son's relationship with Barack and Michelle Obama's youngest daughter. He noted that the couple had already been going out for a year when the relationship hit the press, which allowed him to instill values in his son. It has helped me talk to Chris about how to handle Sasha Obama because we love the Obamas, but Mr. Obama has a daughter that's dating my son, and I have an opportunity and a responsibility to make my son responsible, gentle, kind, loving, and supportive, he shared. The things that I did not get taught. Clifton Sr. constantly reminds Clifton Jr. to be a gentleman and not hurt Sasha. So I text him all the time, and I say, treat Sasha like you would want somebody to treat your daughter. Across several interviews, Powell began pushing back against the narrative. Not just about the lawsuit, not just about the villain roles, but about Hollywood itself. The system, he said, had used him, boxed him in, and underpaid him. He called it out plain and simple. Black actors, especially ones like him who don't play it safe, get the short end of the stick. According to Clifton, the industry had no problem calling when they needed a thug, a violent ex, or a crooked cop. But when it came time to hand out awards, offer leading man roles, or give serious creative input, those calls stopped coming. He wasn't the only one who saw it, but he was one of the few willing to say it out loud. And just like that, the roles he played on screen started following him off screen again. Some people called his interviews refreshing, finally an actor willing to be real. Others called them aggressive, bitter, even dangerous to his brand. But Powell didn't care. He said what he said. And in a town where silence is currency, that made him stand out even more. One of the biggest points he hit on was typecasting. He said Hollywood treated black actors like props. If you weren't funny, you were dangerous. If you weren't soft, you were scary. And if you were someone like him, loud, emotional, complex, you were shoved into the same 3 roles for the rest of your life. He didn't say this with arrogance. He said it with frustration. Because for all his work, all the movies, all the scenes he'd stolen, Clifton Powell never fully broke through. He never got to be the face of a blockbuster, never had the media machine backing him the way it did for other actors with half his resume. And when interviewers brought up the lawsuit, Powell's tone shifted. He didn't dodge it. He didn't deny that it had hurt him, but he made it clear he wasn't going to live his life under that shadow. He insisted again that the claims were false, that he had nothing to apologize for. But when pressed further, his answers got sharp, tense, defensive. And that only added to the tension around him. People didn't know how to read him. Was he angry or just tired? Was he passionate or confrontational? Was he being unfairly silenced? Or was he digging his own hole? Even his body language in interviews made headlines. The way he leaned in, the way he stared, the edge in his voice. It was compelling, but it scared people. Because once you've been branded as intense, anything you say with emotion sounds like aggression. And yet, he kept going.
Guy came to my IG page and called me a C-list actor who ain't S-H-I-T. All you do is people in movies.
Because Clifton wasn't just speaking for himself anymore. He was speaking for every black actor who'd ever been told to tone it down. Every performer who had their range ignored because they didn't fit a neat little box. Every artist who got labeled hard to work with just because they had a voice. Was he angry? Yes. Was he bitter? Maybe. But more than anything, he was honest. And honesty in this industry is risky, especially when it's coming from someone they've already decided not to push. Clifton Powell wasn't trying to make friends. He was trying to make sense of a career that never quite gave back what he put in. And for some fans, that made him even more relatable. For others, it made him hard to watch, because truth like his doesn't come with a soft delivery. It comes sharp, loud, and unforgettable. In any case, Clifton Powell's story doesn't fit neatly into one box. He wasn't the breakout star who got everything he deserved. He wasn't the scandal-ridden villain who spiraled out. He wasn't the industry favorite, but he was never forgotten. And maybe that's the real mystery of his career, how someone so present could still be so overlooked. He gave the performances. He took the roles. He played the game. But when it came time for Hollywood to reward him, to elevate him, it never happened. And for a long time, no one questioned why. People just assumed he stayed in his lane, took what he could get, did what he had to do. But maybe he was being held back the entire time. Held back by typecasting. Held back by a system that didn't know what to do with a black man who was intense and unapologetic. Held back by a lawsuit that never reached trial, but still clung to his name like a stain. And when he finally spoke up, called out the roles, the racism, the disrespect, they didn't rally around him. They distanced themselves even more. Some say he brought it on himself, that he should have smiled more, softened his edges, waited his turn. But that's not who Clifton Powell is, and if you've been paying attention, you know why. He's the product of a world that doesn't reward softness, a man who grew up watching people survive, not succeed. He brought that grit into every role, every interview, every room, and it showed. Sometimes too much, sometimes exactly enough. Anyway, that's it for this video, folks. Bye.